Hi, today I am going to explain the second problem of income from house property. Let me explain the problem first. To find out the gross annual value in the following cases. The property A, B, C, D, four properties are given. Then municipal value of four properties are given. Then fair rent of four property. Then standard rent. The first one is a NA, it's a not applicable, and property B, C and D, the standard rent are given. Next is the monthly rent. So please note down, so monthly rent is given. So monthly rent 1500, 1800, 2000 and 1400. Next is a vacancy period which is given in the form of month, 1 month, and property B is a 2 months, C 7 months and D 6 months. Vacancy period means vacancy means the term during which house is unoccupied. Either it is not used for residential purpose, not used as a let out property. So that is called as a vacancy period. So all the four houses carries vacancy period and all the four houses carries a monthly rent. So therefore all the four houses are considered as a let out property. So before starting calculation of gross annual value, first you have to find out the division of house property. Means whether you have to we have to categorize whether it is a let out property or self occupied property. So here all the properties are let out property based on the informations given like monthly rent and vacancy period. So here in this problem, the properties, all the four properties, part of the year used as a let out and part of the year unoccupied. So then such properties are considered as a let out property for whole year. If a part of the year used as a let out and part of the year unoccupied, then they are considered as a let out properties. Now all A, B, C and D properties are let out for whole year. Now start the calculation of gross annual value. First stage is a expected rental value. This is a format of calculation of gross annual value. First one is the annual municipal value, which are given in the problem of all the properties. Then fair rental value of all the property which are given in the problem. And next is the standard rent. Again, first house is not applicable, and for other three houses. The first calculation is a expected rental value. So expected rental value, the municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is higher but not exceeding standard rent. So here municipal value is a 10,000 and fair rent is a 12,000, but no standard rent here. So therefore higher of these two is expected rental value. In first house, the expected rental value is a 12,000, no standard rent. Standard rent is not applicable. So therefore municipal value or fair rent, whichever is the highest. Now see the second property, the municipal value 12,000 and fair rental value 13,000. The higher of two is 13,000 is the highest, and next to 13,000 or 15,000, whichever is the lowest is a expected rental value. First two highest, the higher value, and 15,000, whichever is the lowest. So lowest is a 13,000. So 13,000 is expected rent for the second house. Next property C, municipal value 14,000 and fair rental value 15,000. The higher of two, highest is 15,000. Then this highest value and 12,000, whichever is the lowest. So lowest is 12,000. So lower is 12,000. So that is expected rent for house C. And next property D, municipal value 15,000 and fair rental value 12,000. The higher of two is 15,000 is the highest here. So 15,000 or 20,000, whichever is the lowest is 15,000. So 15,000 is a expected rental value for property D. Property A, B, C and D. So first stage is over. That's a calculation of expected rental value. Clause is for the calculation of expected rental value. Clause is municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is higher but not exceeding the standard rent. First two highest, then higher value to be compared with the standard rent, and whichever is the lowest is a expected rental value, and whenever standard rent is given. If the standard rent is not given, the higher of a municipal value and fair rental value is the expected rental value. Next stage is a rent received, or it's called also called as a rent receivable. Even you can consider it as a rent receivable. So rent received for let out term. So in case of property A, there is a 1 month vacancy. Vacancy period is 1 month. So therefore the house was let out for 11 months. So the rent received is for 11 months. 1500 per month rent into 11 months. So rent received for property A is 11,500. And why this 11 months? Because there is a 1 month vacancy. 12 months minus 1. So let out term is only 11 months. House was let out for 11 months only. So rent received is also only for 11 months. So therefore 1500 into 11. So rent received for property A is 11,500. And next property B, the rent received is a monthly rent 1800. As per the problem, 1800 is a monthly rent, and there are 2 months vacancy. So therefore the rent received is for 10 months, or the let out duration is a 10 months. So therefore the total rent received is a 18,000 in case of a property B. 1800 into 10 months, 10 because 2 months vacancy, 12 minus 2. So 10 months only it was let out. So therefore rent received is rupees 18,000 for property B. And next property C, the monthly rent is 2,000 and vacancy period 7 months. So therefore let out term is only 5 months. The house property C was let out only for 5 months. Okay, so therefore monthly rent is a 2000 into 5 months. So the rent received is 10,000 for property C. And whereas in case of property D, the monthly rent is 1400 and vacancy period is 6 months. So it means 6 months only it was let out. So 1400 into 6 months, so 8400 is a rent received for property D. So this is how to calculate rent received whenever vacancy period is given. So we have to calculate rent received only for let out term, for the duration of let out. So in case of property A, 1 month vacancy, so rent received is only for 11 months. In case of property B, 2 months is a vacancy, so rent received is for 10 months. And whereas in case of house C, the 7 months vacancy term, so rent received is only for 5 months. And whereas in case of house D, the rent received let out term is only 6 months, means vacancy period 6 months. So therefore let out is only 6 months. So rent received for house D is 8,400. So this is how to calculate rent received whenever vacancy period is given. Next stage is a gross annual value. After calculation of rent received, then you have to calculate gross annual value. The gross annual value, there are two provisions for the calculation of gross annual value. First one, expected rental value or rent received, whichever is highest whenever there is no vacancy period and unrealized rent. If there is a vacancy period, then gross annual value is equal to rent received. So two clauses. The first one, expected rent or rent received, whichever is highest whenever there is no unrealized rent and vacancy period. That is the first clause. The second one, rent received is equal to gross annual value if there is a vacancy period and unrealized rent. Anyone, not both. If vacancy period is given, then also rent received is equal to gross annual value. If unrealized rent is given, then rent received itself is the gross annual value. Even if vacancy period as well as unrealized rent both are given, then rent received is itself is a gross annual value. You have to compare rent received with the expected rental value to find out the gross annual value whenever there is no vacancy period and no unrealized rent. So if there is no unrealized rent and vacancy period, then only you have to compare expected rent with the rent received. Otherwise, rent received itself is a gross annual value. See, in this problem, all the properties carries vacancy period. In first house 1 month, second house 2 months, and third house 7 months, and fourth house 6 months. So therefore, Here in all the properties, rent received itself is the gross annual value. So gross annual value for the first property is 11,500 rent received, and in case of second house it is 18,000 rent received, no comparison. And in case of third house, the rent received is 10,000, and in case of fourth house, rent received is 8,400. That itself is the gross annual value. 11,500 itself is a gross annual value. Here 18,000 itself is a gross annual value, and property C is a 10,000 itself is a gross annual value, and whereas in case of property D, 8,400 itself is a gross annual value. So this is how to calculate gross annual value whenever there is a vacancy period. So that is about the solution for the problem 2. Thank you very much.